All right, and that goal will be for e-commerce to move from the ratio of a conversion rate to your end goal of having someone complete an action that you want them to complete. So one thing we're going to talk about today is the e-commerce checkout flow. And so I know a lot of you out there are the designers, the thinkers, the strategists, the creatives, and you're not seeing a lot of value in studying e-commerce. And I totally get that. There's that sort of overly salesy part of the internet, and you think it only relates maybe to traditional websites, but it doesn't matter if it's a website, an app, social media platform way of purchasing things, or if it's even taking this to outside of the context of digital business to how you apply for jobs, how you apply for grad school, and even a metaphor that I used to use a lot about a mountain and a ski mountain, and where everyone starts out in the mountain shopping area and après ski area, and then some make it to the parking lot, some make it to the lift line, some make it up to the lift or the gondola for a view, and only a few make it to each level of difficulty or the backcountry or even the summit. So the e-commerce checkout flow is just an opportunity to look at something in the framework of this bucket of people that arrive at a homepage, a landing page, or some initial start to an app, and then make their way through these different series of steps before they get to an outcome that you want to get there. And then looking at not just the number of people at each of those steps, but the conversion rate between the steps. Over time, it allows us to sort of elucidate where there might be issues, which are opportunities for us to optimize, and find out how that connects to the business context of the campaigns we're having, the influencers we hire, the different types of traffic and the different types of demographics that are coming to our site, and the return on the ad spend that we're spending to advertise, and if it's worth it or not. Is it able to get someone from the homepage to the final confirmation? And maybe there are other things to discover along the way that are not working, like credit card processing or shipping or something like that. So we're going to talk about that a lot more, but just wanted to set the stage for the value of looking at things in an e-commerce checkout flow, especially this very kind of linear, simple one. And so this is kind of a simple product that we'll be looking at in a sort of format that you would be used to seeing as an export from any type of analytics, whether that's Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics. This one's modeled a little bit closer to how I would look at it in Adobe and export it to do my own analysis, and we can go from there. But note that things like mattresses or cell phones or cars have other steps around customizing packages and upselling and running a credit check that are more complexity to the flow, as well as there is a lot of different things in the sort of non-linear world where you might be circling back to a step and doing research, and that sort of more flywheel-like structure that's been really popular in the last 5 years or so. This is sort of the ground work. So, once you figure out how to do this and you're good at optimizing and you understand the framework, then of course there's a lot more complexity to come, like in anything. All right, so I have some graphs for us to explore, and I want us to take a look at a few of these ahead of time. So whenever I'm doing an analysis, I really want to figure out what's happening overall, and then of all of those things that can be overwhelming since there's so many different pages and everything like that, how can we then narrow it down? So when we were looking at that sheet here where there's this kind of Visio flow diagram and there's the home page, you're moving to a product detail page, which is where you would have like a cell phone, or you would have some other type of product like a laptop, that kind of thing. That's your product detail page where the description is, where all the images are, and you can change the colors and all those sorts of things on that page, maybe some reviews depending on the site. And then you would move on to, if that looked appealing, to add it to the cart, and then of course checking out with address and billing address and payment, whether that's checking ACH like old school style, or if that's PayPal, Apple Pay, Google Pay, Venmo, and like 50 other options right now. Of course, credit card being super popular, and some of those others coming as well. So that step, and then to final confirmation. And of course, there's some steps after that. You'll be receiving emails on shipping and delivery and order confirmations, and then you may even continue on in the user journey and come back and purchase again, or be a referral to someone else that may come in there as well into their own flow and their own checkout funnel. So with that, we have a set of data that we'll take a look at here, and it is super simple. What we have is date, and then all of those steps, and the number of visitors to each of those individual steps over time for a few weeks, but by the day. And so we'll be able to look at the trends on those visitors. So in the data, it is just date and visitors per each of those steps. What's missing is a conversion rate, so we can do that ourselves, and we'll get there in a little bit. But like I said, really wanted to look overall. Here's the page visits. What is the trend? So what is the context of the business that we're in? What do we know already? Do we know that we've got a couple campaigns that we're looking at and that different things happened on different days? And so at least we have kind of an idea of where something might be happening. And then what is happening on these steps? So on the home page, I see immediately one big spike, and you can hover over that and see the tool tip in Tableau and see that there was 34,574,000 visitors on that day on July 14th. And there's also some other interesting things too. That was kind of a peak. There's a little bit of a valley and another little tiny peak there as well. So I would take that as a note that I would want to describe that on that date, that many people arrived. That is a peak. And then I would also look at where are some other interesting things. So this is very like Sesame Street style, like one of these things is not like the other, and you want to start to identify some trends that are interesting compared to the rest of the items. So we have something very interesting happening here. So those 2 points had something going on there, and then the Our Story page had some different behavior. So if I knew there was 2 different campaigns going on, I'd be kind of comparing those 2 different days and also this behavior and see, does that connect to the story? Would those 2 different campaigns be reaching different people and have a different effect on the pages that they're looking at here? And would that then end up being more or less likely for them to purchase something in the end? Or are there any other blockers in between that? So that is fascinating. And then there's also, these all seem to have somewhat of the same behavior around that date and not much effect on that other date. So the number of visitors is pretty similar there. And then this final one has kind of a strong, more simplistic effect than these 3. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but those are the things that are like on my mind as I'm exploring more beyond just the simple page visits. Now we're going to get to how to do this, but the conversion rate could be from any spot to any other spot. So from that home page all the way to final confirmation and purchasing that item. So that's kind of your conversion from the traffic and your campaigns and influencers and referrals all the way to the end. So that's a good number, and that does help us tell the story of, is that ad spend worth it? So the return on your ad spend, did that make sense? So you can compare what you paid for those ads and those influencers or campaigns, and then what you got out of it as far as revenue. The profit is even more important. So that's one way to look at it. But there's also these things that are happening in between. So kind of like I mentioned earlier, between that product page and the cart, is there something about the imagery? Is there something about the color being not easily changeable, or the color that someone wants isn't available? So maybe that's out of stock. So right now that's a big thing. So is the Google 6 Pixel Pro in mint green, is that in stock? And maybe that's preventing someone from adding it to cart. And so you don't know those qualitative things yet, but you do know if there's a drop off over time. You can compare it to the other things and the other data that you might be able to get. So here you would see that be a drop off from the from the product page to the shopping page. I don't think I have that exact one listed here, but we have some other ones. So homepage to final is the first one I mentioned, so you can see the spike there, and then you can also see from the product to the final page and some others. So what is great is doing a bunch of these and then seeing what is interesting, what has a big effect, and is that correlated with something else that's happening. The very simplest thing you could graph is this, where you're looking at just the visits. So not even a conversion rate, you're looking at the home page and the final confirmation page to see if there's a relationship. So this is a dual axis chart, so they're overlaid on top of each other. And the way you would do that in Tableau, let me undo it and so you can see it without it. So you would just drag and drop the home page up to here and drag and drop that final checkout page there. And so you'll see them side by side. Of course, the homepage visitors are going to be millions upon millions of people, and that final confirmation page, like we go down in that funnel to a smaller piece, it's going to be much smaller. So the axes are very different. That said, it's very nice to do a dual axis here because you can overlay them on top of each other and see that relative relationship. Now, like I said, this isn't super accurate as far as the axes being different. So that final confirmation page, we're in the hundreds of thousands here versus the tens of millions there. So you have to be careful with how you communicate that to your viewers. But this is super helpful because if we didn't have it different like that relative, you can right click and click synchronize the axis. And so there's some cases where that'll be great because you want to make sure they're precise and they're just off a little bit. But in this case, because there's so few people at that final confirmation page as a percentage of the people that are at the home page, you can't really tell the interesting relationship that is there in that tiny detail. So the non-synced dual axis chart is the best way to do this. And that's a great place to start. So you can see on the 2 different days what the different effect is, where the checkout confirmation page is spiking there but not there, but homepage views have something else going on. So when you're analyzing this, you want to be sure to be specific, like I have that mentioned in the title there. On X date there was a bump of visits, an increase, a spike. But anytime you say a qualification like that kind of description, especially because those are sort of subjective in how strong they are, and it could sound a little bit too much like hyperbole, we want it to stay data backed, and to say it was a 10% increase from the prior day or a 10% from the previous month. Just keep it tied to actual data and the change from day over day or year over year or month over month, and that kind of thing, and mention the specifics. So we can look at a few more things. One really powerful thing we can do is look at the conversion rate on top of one of the lines. So we're going to do that next, but I want to set the stage for why that's helpful. So this is just a graph of the cart page and how many visitors are at the cart page, but overlaid is the color of that conversion rate to the final conversion. So you're not only getting the number of visitors that are in that cart page, but you're seeing who are actually buying as a percentage in the color. So you can very quickly tell, like within half a second, that there's a very high percentage converting on that date on July 20th. So that is definitely something to look into. So whatever is happening, the efficiency of the people that are landing on that page on that date is much higher than it is otherwise, and it's much weaker in this area below, and it's kind of in the middle there. So you want to tie that to the business context. So is there a different demographic that's coming? Is there a different campaign? Is there a change to that cart page? So is it working better? Is there some different drop down? Is there better description? Is there a video, a help, a tooltip? There's so many different possible things it could be, but look into the context that you know. So there's what you definitely know about the campaigns and those things, so bring that in if you have it. And if there's something else, you can say, I'm not sure what's happening on these days, but this is what I would look into because something is more efficient about it in this case on this date versus that date. Another way you could do that too, so these are the conversion calculations as well, and you can do a highlight table. So instead of doing a line chart, you can do this, and you can immediately tell there's some interesting days here to look at. So on July 20th, that we were looking at, that little increase there on the cart to final. That's the one we were just viewing. That has a 16% conversion. Very, very big conversion. So it's really trying to tell us to look at something that's going on there. And you also have a massive one on About Us to final on the 14th. So something's going on there that we should probably check out. And same with shipping on the 8th. So you may be looking at totally different data than me. I've got some e-commerce data from a site you don't know about, and you may be looking at another one. So it's not the lessons in particular from this one that you should take away, but you should explore whatever are the trends and patterns in the data that you have. All right, so after this, I want to figure out, with that new data, let's bring it in and see what we can do. So remember, it looks like this. It's just date and the different page visits and that sort of thing. But what we can do is add a new data source and bring in the data we have there. So coming up fast. Double checking the date is a date, of course, and our measures are measures with numbers, so that's awesome. And now we have a new sheet here. So this is our data. So we just have those visits, but what we need is a conversion rate. So we need a formula, very simple one, but from any step to any step, we can make that formula. So we're gonna right click there in the area, or command click on a Mac, and create a calculated field. And you can start with any of these spots. I would choose the one that's further in the funnel than the one that you start with, because you're going to be going smaller as you go down the funnel. Probably, if it's in a linear process like we're talking about, there's some complexity to that where they may not go in a straight line in some cases, but for most of it, this should be in a linear spot. But for example, you could go checkout confirmation page divided by the product detail page. And so that's PDP, product detail page, to the final checkout. And click OK. So you can do that as many times as you want in as many places as you want. It doesn't have to be 5 to 6. It doesn't have to be 1 to 8. It could be 2 to 7. So how many people saw our story and then made payment? So any of those work out. But like I was saying before, that very simple way to check this out is maybe do the visitors there. Of course, we can start with the date will help us on our graph, and do exact date. We have a time series of the visitors to the product detail page right now, and we have the conversion rate for final checkout from that product detail page, and we can choose a different color, make it a little thicker so you can see it on the screen. We can do product page to final with conversion rate. All right. Of course, you can clean up the graph a little bit better. We know what a date is. That's fine. And this, to me, this is great as far as keeping it in the data, because it's the step in precise way. But if I was presenting this to a viewer, I actually just want visitors here, because I've already got in the title product page to final. So that's what it essentially was writing there, and we can just have the very bare minimum of what we need and change that to conversion rate. All right, so that is the main thing I want to get across. The way we think about this too, like I was talking before, there's those specific callouts on, July 14th or July 19th. There was an increase of 2.5 times the visitors, and the conversion rate went up by 7%. So that, peaks and valleys. So was there a steady increase all the way, or was there a spike at the 19th and then a dip right afterwards? So that kind of specifics backed in data, not over exaggerating, and that kind of thing. And then why are you emphasizing what you're emphasizing in the graph? So why did you visualize it that way? So the reason why we were looking at this and we were really emphasizing the conversion rate here is because that tells us the efficiency of that traffic, of that set of visitors versus just the number of visitors there, because selling is what our goal is in the end, or having someone complete whatever action that is. So we're grounded in what our goal is and the outcome, and we're emphasizing that as the color, and we're emphasizing the spike here. So you can also emphasize the spike in a few different ways. You can click always show the mark on here, so you can go mark label always show. That's a little bit different than if you did label and you can show mark labels, and that's probably too many. You can do the min and max there, and then even just maybe skip the minimum since that's less important. That's one way to do it. You can also do the line ends where it's with there. Max makes a little more sense for this graph for sure, and of course you can change this match mark color will even make it the same color as the graph there, and you can change the size and bold, or automatic with black, or match color, all sorts of different options. And if you wanted to say something about this, you can do an annotation to that mark and make it a little bit different. You could say that's just a little text around it, and the variable that you have there is that. So you could say visitors, make it a little more human-like, and put the conversion rate here. So you can play around with what looks best for your presentation, and of course you can change the format of these like anything, and click format with the shading there, and try out some of the other design elements. You can even make it like a sentence too if you want. I'm kind of partial to a little bit more of a narrative format. All right, there you go. And yeah, so the other thing to think about too is you covered the observations that were backed in data, but there's also speculation. So what you see in the data in that context of this campaign was on this day, or I think this one was on the other day, and what else is happening. So we were looking at those conversion rate comparisons earlier on, and so you can say that like maybe one campaign posted on one day and another on another, and maybe they had different demographics, and maybe on one day the particular conversion rate from the cart to shipping wasn't working. So what could have been different about those demographics where the shipping costs were different, or the shipping page for some reason didn't work? Could they be from a different region, and did we plan for that or not? So there's a lot of questions you can sort of have ready to ask the client, even if you don't know what's going on yet. But make that clear that that's speculation versus what's truly data backed, and keep them in separate paragraphs, and make it clear that you don't know those things for sure, that those are things that you're looking into or you're curious about. All right, with that, we will wrap up. Feel free to create more than just a few conversion rates to explore and see what kind of patterns emerge.